Holy crap. Today's interview made me so happy. I was with Shawn Walsh from Encore Strategic. You may know him. He wrote the Pumpkin Plan for MSPs book based off of Mike McCallowitz's Pumpkin Plan. He co-wrote that book, been all over this place in the industry for a long time, runs awesome peer groups. Today's conversation took this amazing turn away from the tacticals of peer groups and stuff and into some of his own story and how he came into this coaching and personal development and business development journey. And listening to this guy talk about how he was running his business into the ground, had some realizations, made some personal changes, and then 400% growth in 18 months later and sold the company. This is a good one. Do not change the channel, folks. Let's do it. Shawn Walsh, I finally got you on the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
I don't remember who introduced us, but we have enough people. We're in the same circles. Do you remember how we met?
Ryan Hoppy made the connection.
Oh, of course. What a gem. Another friend of the pod. He's been on the podcast too. Yeah, and then we met, and it was just one of those conversations where we were just same vibration. We were saying a lot of the same stuff.
Yep.
Because we both do similar things. So for anybody who doesn't yet know much about you, do you want to just kind of set up real quick who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So Shawn Walsh, I'm the CEO of Encore Strategic. We help MSPs to profit, grow, and exit. I came out of the MSP space myself, ran an MSP for 21 years that we grew to locations in 4 states. And we had an exit to private equity when we got an unsolicited offer that I like to say my wife took one look at the offer letter and looked at me and said, it's time to go.
Right.
And, I wasn't ready to be done. I love teaching. I've taught college. I've taught high school. I still work as a scuba instructor most of the winter. I love teaching. I love sharing knowledge. And so this is what we do now.
Yeah. And speaking of, you scuba in the winter because you spend part of your year or all of your year down.
So we're based in New Hampshire. Today I'm coming from Guilford, New Hampshire. But we spend half the winter in Aruba, and we have a property there, and we actually built out a classroom there. So we have an outdoor classroom and function area where we do peer group meetings and workshops down there. And we have a Michelin rated chef that comes and cooks for everybody. So not to plug it too hard, but it's a lot of fun.
Wait, maybe I even spoke at one of your peer groups, or I was Brian threw my hat in the ring or something because you needed somebody dropped out or something like that for one of those gatherings. And he was like, yeah, I got to go to Aruba for this thing. And I was like, Aruba? Whoa, what's an Aruba? And then he mentioned it. And I was like, how do I meet Shawn and get invited to Aruba?
Yeah. We're going to have you out the next time we do the winter meetings in Aruba.
I know, man. I'm there. Absolutely. I'll be there. So it's a cool thing that you do, which is also, that'd be fun to get into some of the like post-exit kind of life that you built for yourself. Not that you're retired, you're a very busy guy and you're still humming along. But I just want to get right into this. You're a guy who like me, but you've got way more time in the business. You've coached and supported and mentored and just collaborated with a lot of MSPs.
Yeah.
Probably in the hundreds, maybe more, right? I mean, lots and lots of them.
Yeah, definitely in the hundreds, maybe even more than that. But
and what is a number one problem, most consistent one that MSPs are bringing that they're trying to solve? It doesn't have to be sales. Just curious, what do you see the most?
I think number one, they undervalue themselves. I think they're afraid to raise their prices. They're afraid of charging too much. There's a concept that I teach that came from business school, but it's the idea of that you can be a price leader or you can be a value leader. And the example of a price leader is Walmart. What's the slogan you see at Walmart? Lowest prices guaranteed. That's what they compete on, price. The other box is a value leader. And in almost every major market, you're going to find a Walmart and you're also going to find a Nordstrom's. And when you walk into Nordstrom's, you're never going to see a sign that says lowest price is guaranteed. But one of my good friends and client, his wife is a surgeon, and when she walks in the door, she is at Nordstrom's. She is greeted by name, and they know exactly what she likes, and they bring it over to her.
Yeah.
And she pays a premium price to have that level of service. So that's a value leader. And the thing is, you got to play in one box or the other. And what
Mm.
so many MSPs try to do is straddle the line. And when you're straddling the line, you're in no man's land. You're trying to compete on price, and and when they say, well, your price is too high, our first reaction is, well, we could do it for less.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to provide a high level of value, but we don't have the profit and the funding to support a high level of value. So now the client gets upset. We're upset because the client's demanding the value that we promised in the first place, but yet we're not making any money. So it really creates a contentious relationship. So you need to decide which box you're in. And the reality is most MSPs just don't have the resources to play in the price leader box. We can't
Mm.
afford to be the low bidder.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my normal response in a sales proposal meeting was when they would say to me, well, just so you know, we're getting 3 bids. My response would be, let me save you some time. I'm going to be the highest. Can I get an early lunch, or is it even worth us talking any further?
Yeah.
And as blunt as that response sounds, a lot of people would go, oh, wait a minute, what do you mean? Now they wanted to hear me.
Yeah.
So it actually opened up the door to conversation better than you would think. But you know what? If they truly are just looking for the low bidder, get the hell out of there. Take the early lunch, because they're not going to be a good client.
Right. Man. I mean, thanks for coming. We nailed it. We got it in 5.
Take the early lunch now.
No, man. I love the way first of all, the Walmart example is great. And it's important, to expand on that analogy, to remember there's a reason Walmart is the lowest price guaranteed, because they're vertically integrated, because they made those tennis balls and they shipped them to their own store. They built an empire by design to be able to compete at that price. You're not vertically integrated. You didn't develop all of these tools. You're paying all of these other vendors to offer that product.
Walmart was a company that was built from the get-go for that type of pricing. I mean, Walmart doesn't stock inventory. They make their vendors stock it because they have that kind of leverage.
Yeah.
Most small business owners don't. So,
Right.
but we can add value. We can go out and we can offer a better product, and we can provide better service, and we can provide value that allows the client to make more money. It doesn't have to be on the fact that we're charging them less. It's that we're helping them deliver more.
Right.
So you have to take it from that standpoint. I
Yeah.
am very happy to be the highest bidder when I go into something, because it eliminates a lot of what we refer to in my book, cheap pain in the ass clients.
Right. Your book, by the way, kind of a staple, if you're not too bashful. Will you talk for a second about your book and just a little bit of the
Sure,
origin?
not that I'm bashful or anything.
For those listening, it's out and that's now up by his head. So tell us about the book a little bit.
So the Pumpkin Plan for Managed Service Providers, I wrote it with my good friend, Dave Kava, and he is my co-author and one of my very good friends. And he and I were in a peer group together very early on in our MSP careers, and our companies kind of grew up together. And there's a lot of experience there between the two of us. And the book, you might recognize the title because it comes from Mike McAllowett's original book, The Pumpkin Plan. And when I was keynoting at a series of ASCII events, Mike was kind of the big brand name keynote speaker, and I got to meet him. And obviously, I'd been a fan of his books, and we had used the Pumpkin Plan in my company. And over the series of hanging out with Mike for 10 shows, we got to be very friendly, and him and Dave and I were talking. And most people don't realize it, but Mike's first company that he sold was an IT services company. And Dave was actually friends with his business partner who he sold out to when he sold it. And Mike had said, I've had a lot of successful derivative books with Profit First, where he has people who are specialists in industry write a version of the book that is tailored specifically to that industry. And he said, I've never had anybody do that with the pumpkin plan. I'd love for you guys to be the first ones to do it. What do you think? And so when somebody who's a multi-time best-selling author says, "Hey, do you want to write a book with me and my team?" and you don't say no.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. It was a lot more work than I think either one of us expected going into it, but it was also worth it.
Yeah.
And it was everything in the book Dave and I wrote. It was, Mike's team gave us some framework, but we did the writing. There were no ghostwriters. Everything comes from the heart. We were brutally honest about the mistakes we made and the pain that we experienced. And I hope that the book allows a lot of people to not have to experience that pain firsthand. And I hope they get the benefit of learning from Dave and I's mistakes.
But I want to pivot back here to this. I asked you, what is the number one problem? And you said it's that they undervalue themselves. And I want to know, does that extend beyond just the pricing? Because that's a very strong language. And I want to know more about how does that manifest other than just maybe they don't charge enough per seat, or maybe they don't know their numbers. Is that a tactical problem? Is it a self-worth or a mindset problem? Or like, what all does that mean, really?
I think it's a mindset problem to some degree. And it's not unique to MSPs. We work with other small business professional service companies, and I see it in entrepreneurs across the board. And we go in because we're good at something and we want to provide it to people. And, we always think about price being first and foremost. But the other place where it's not only in charging too little or not thinking we can charge more for what we do, but it's also in our time. One of the things that I did early on in my MSP, somebody said, well, we can't shut down operations this week for that server. I need you to do it on Saturday. Okay. And we wouldn't think of charging a higher rate, and I'd have my team working through the weekend and we wouldn't be charging anymore. So I didn't value my own time and having any concept of work-life balance, not that entrepreneurs do. That's a whole nother discussion. It was very funny because my coach had told me that raise the rates or tell them that if you want it done on the weekend, sure, we can do that, but it's going to cost you time and a half or double time.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because the minute I did that, it was like, well, I guess we can shut down for a couple of days during the week. So, I wasn't valuing it, but they put a value on it because the minute I told them sure, we can do it, but it costs more.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it was okay. They could shut down. So if they're not going to value that time, why should I?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, people do that. And, it was funny. I remember one day I was sitting there with the person who was my coach and he's telling me how I have to raise my prices and I'm not charging enough. And I'm looking at him and I'm saying for the umpteenth time, I can't raise my rates. My clients will never pay that. And he lost it. And he just glared at me. He said, stop imparting your cheapness on your clients. They're not nearly as cheap as you are. And it's like, and I thought about that. Yeah, I am a pretty cheap bastard. I can squeeze a nickel till the buffalo screams. But, and so I went back and here's the funny thing. I went back and I raised my rates 10% the next day. You know what happened?
Nothing, probably.
Nothing.
Everybody went,
and then
then
about a year later, 6 months later, we raised them another 10%.
Yeah.
And nothing happened again. And the reality is, in years of finally learning to raise my rates regularly, I have never lost a client because of raising rates. And that's what nobody expects. Everybody thinks if I raise my rates, the world is going to come to an end. I'm going to lose these clients. And in the event you do lose a client, it's the client you probably should have fired a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it's never going to be that A-list client.
Right.
So,
and I've never seen it. I have seen people lose clients, but it's, to your point, it's the ones that they would love to be able to fire anyway. But guess how the only way to be able to afford to fire your crappy client is to charge everybody else what you're worth. And so if you have, the math is simple. If you've got 10 clients, you raise your rates 10%, one of them quits, you're making the same amount of money for 90% of the work.
Exactly. We have a card. I don't have it here in front of me, but I give them out at trade shows. And it was given to me by a very early coach that I worked with. And it's basically a graph. And it says, if you discount by this much, this is how much more work you have to do to make up for that discount. And if you flip the card over, it says, but if you raise your rates, this is how much business you'd have to lose to just be back where you were. And when people see that, they see the numbers, because it's such a difference when you put them next to each other. Most people look at it and go, wow, I didn't realize I was going to have to work 3 times as hard to make up for that discount. But I'd have to lose 60% of my business for me to be back at the same profit level if I raise them. And people don't realize this. I have a blog post article from ages ago that's probably on the website somewhere, but it's to stop discounting, because when you're giving people discounts, you're discounting your own value. Yeah. And you're sending a bad message. You're sending a message that, yeah, that price I gave you before, well, that wasn't real. So, I lied to you there. So therefore, now everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
So I say discounts are like diamonds. They last forever. If you have to give somebody something to win a deal, give them something for free. Nobody expects free to last forever. Free is an implied one time only, and people get that. But when you give them a discount, just try to take it away and see the arguments you get.
Yeah. Wow. That's so solid. That's a good little social media moment we're going to put, and I'm going to tag you because that's great, Shawn. I think, the pricing thing, it's mindset is a big part of it. Also, just not knowing your numbers. We all know that too. You think you're profitable because you're not really accounting. You're only looking at the markup on your tech stack. You're not actually considering operational, staffing and all of that. But I want to pivot a little bit. I want to talk about coaching, because coaching has obviously been a really big part of your journey. And now you are a coach as well, but I always love talking about people who coach, who have coaches or have been coached. What role has it played in your success to have coaches in your corner, and how has that manifested in your success in your MSP and beyond?
If I didn't have a coach and I didn't have my peer group, I would still be running a sub $1 million MSP and replacing my staff every 6 months. I had a complete lack of self-awareness. I didn't know what numbers I should be looking at. There were so many factors. I mean, it was multifaceted. The coaching and peer group that I belong to was the best single investment I ever made. And as you said, I'm coaching people right now. I still have a coach. Somebody told me when I started coaching, and this, I laughed because it stuck with me immediately. And they said, well, if you're a coach and you don't have a coach, then you're a hypocrite. You're absolutely correct. I've been doing this a long time, man. I'm definitely on the later end of the spectrum of the demographic now, when you're checking the boxes, but you know what? I'm still learning stuff every day.
Yeah.
I've been having fun diving into AI and how we're going to use that. I still love to learn. There is no greater value that you could make in your company than to get yourself coaching. And that is not a plug, because you don't have to get it from me. I am not the coach for everybody. You need to have a connection with the coach. You need to have a style that is compatible, that works. And my style is not compatible with everybody. And I tell people all the time when we talk to them about peer groups, I say, you don't have to join my peer group, but please go and find a peer group that works for you and join it.
Yeah.
Because it will be the single best investment you make. And it doesn't have to be with me.
Yeah. And I love that. There's a high adoption of peer groups in our industry, which is cool. We have such a community driven industry, which is kind of baffling, like we're the island of misfit toys, like people who probably didn't really plug in growing up or whatever, or they sort of, back when being a tech wasn't cool, now it's cooler to be a tech, but anyway, I love that part.
It's so funny when I talk to people in other industries and I tell them that we have this peer group, because we do have some groups that are specifically not for MSPs, and it's an unknown concept.
Hmm.
In our industry, it's so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, we have there, two primary people that we have to thank for that in our industry. And it's Larry Scholes, who founded Taylor Business Group, and Arlen Sorensen, who founded HTG, which became Evolve. I mean, those guys understood the power of community. And they also understood that there were a lot of business people out there who needed help in learning how to be a business person and not an engineer.
Yeah.
And it goes, and it's true through other industries now, and we're starting to bring that there as well. But
Yeah.
it's but yeah, like I say, you just join a peer. If you're not in one, join one. You don't have to join mine. I'd
Yeah.
love you to check it out, but it's got to be a fit for you.
Yeah. Well, and how many of them get to go to Aruba? There's my plug for you. You're going to learn, Shawn. The whole reason I asked you here is just me hard selling you on you bringing me to Aruba. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. So coaching, obviously, couldn't agree more. Peer group. I have a little peer group now. We have some name for it. I don't remember what it is, but it's a bunch of vendors, kind of same generation of vendors, not meaning we're all the same age, but our companies all started within a couple of years of each other.
Yeah.
And, there's like an older guard of vendors who are kind of ahead of us, more mature, or maybe even kind of like all trying to sell now. And then there's this kind of up and comers on the vendor side. And I have a little group of them. We meet quarterly and basically like, what's the biggest problem you're facing right now?
And there are some like that. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's why I say you need to find the group that works for you, because some of them, I call them mutual admiration societies. You're there, because you want the pat on the back and everybody to tell you how wonderful you are. And in our peer groups, I always say we're going to be the tough love peer group. We're the ones who are going to kick you in the butt, but we're also going to, when things are bad, we're going to help you up off the ground. But we're also not going to mince words, and we're going to say, you're full of BS. You're just telling us the good stuff, and you're not sharing the real problems that you need to solve for.
Yeah.
And what I find is that some peer groups have a evolution that they go through. When they start, everybody's around the same place. But then as they grow, the companies grow at different rates. They're in very different places.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting in a room trying to talk business, when one company is at 5 million and another's at 500,000 in revenue, they're speaking very different languages. So what we've done is we've tiered the group. So we will promote you out of a group when you hit a certain level and into the next level.
Yeah, which makes
we find that breaks that up.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you about this topic in general. I mean, it's come up now because it's relevant in the peer groups, right? There is a self-awareness that's required. Oftentimes, I feel like one of our biggest growth inhibitors is the degree to which we are self-aware.
Very true.
And everybody has blind spots. Everybody. And so you need, it doesn't matter how good your vision is, you can never see your own back. And you need people around you to help you in those areas. And obviously a peer group we're using, this is a great vehicle to help you in all these ways. But let's pivot for a second and talk about outside of a peer group, whether it's in addition to being in a peer group or maybe you never join a peer group. I want to ask you about kind of honesty and self-awareness. And what advice do you give, or what do you sort of see out there with the MSP how do you become more self-aware? How do you become more honest with yourself about your limitations?
I'm going to give you a story from the book here.
Okay.
And at one point, we were probably not even at 500,000 in revenue, and it was me and 3 or 4 employees, and I kept cycling through. I lost my number 2 guy, who was my right-hand man. He left. He said, "You're always mad at me. You're always yelling." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Get out of here, you disloyal bastard." And I'm like, "I'll do this better myself." And then I'm cycling through employees, and finally one day my wife comes in, closes the door. She looks at me. She goes, "You do realize that everybody here is scared to death of you, right?" And I'm like, "What do you mean they're scared of me? I'm a teddy bear. I'm the nicest guy in the world. Who the hell is scared of me? Dumb bastards." And then I got introduced to personality profiling. And I remember reading my first personality profile and going, "Oh my God, I'm an asshole. And they all
Wow.
know it. And it was an eye opener. And I do only learn the hard way, but I do learn.
Hmm.
And it was tough. I mean, I had a lot of coaching, a lot of self-reflection. Who do I want to be? Who do I want people to perceive me as? And it was a change. It was a very hard change. And like I say, I talk about it in detail in the book, but
Yeah.
I had basically turned into all the bosses that I had hated. And because it was the example I had seen, and I didn't even realize that I was falling into it.
Mm.
The personality profiling, I am a huge proponent of based on my own experience. Myself and everybody on my team is certified in how to give the personality profiles and debrief them. But one of the things when I first started coaching, I was realizing there were certain clients I was having a tough time with. And then I started having them do a EQ assessment, emotional intelligence. And the first thing that EQ measures is self awareness and then self control. Knowing that do you know that your head is in a bad spot and that you're coming across bad, and doing that, can you control it and stop saying stupid things?
Right.
When I realized the people that we were having the hard time coaching, were the common denominator was low EQ. Now, the good thing is, if you're low in EQ, it's very coachable if you're willing to be coached. It's very easy to coach up. And just being aware of it is the first step in coaching up on it, because most people aren't even aware that they're coming in that low. And so now when we bring on a new client, whether they're a direct client or whether they're a peer group member, the first thing we do is have them take a battery of personality profiles, and we give them the results, and we explain to them where they're we the minute we see those reports, we know where their struggles are going to be and where they need to start. And we know if they're going to show up and be honest in the group or not. And so we address that right out of the gate now, because it is that important.
Wow. Talk to me about this personality profile. Like, tell me more about that framework. And
Sure.
I know we could probably go forever on it. So it doesn't have to be all the nitty gritty, but just tell me
Yeah.
about it a
There's
little
a
bit.
there's a whole bunch of them out there. The one that we probably use the most is what's called a trimetrics profile, because it has three components. It's three different sciences, and we're combining those sciences to get more depth and insight. Yeah, a lot of people have heard of DISC. DISC is fantastic, but it's only one piece, and we don't ever use DISC alone. We don't feel that it gives enough depth. So we combine the three sciences of DISC, which is how you do what you do. It is observable behavior. If I teach you DISC, you can probably watch somebody and figure out where they're going to fall based on their actions. But it's the how we do what we do. How do people perceive us? The second science that we blend in is driving forces. And driving forces is why we do what we do. It's intrinsic, it's not observable. But if we're in a job function, if we're going to work every day and our top four driving forces aren't being consistently fulfilled, we're not going to be happy in the job. You're going to wind up with a wrong seat fit
Mhm.
in a position. And then the third science that we combine is the EQ, or emotional intelligence. And that's measuring, as I said, self awareness, self regulation, social awareness. Can we read other people's mental state? Social regulation. Do we have the ability to influence them? Can we
Yeah.
talk them off the ledge or convince them to jump? Um, and then motivation beyond our driving forces. So, but when we combine those three sciences, we get a pretty good picture of where there may be issues. Now, it's still not. I have to be careful using the term personality profile. Human personalities are very, very complex, very depth. This
Yeah.
measures three specific components, but there are three components that have a lot to do with our success at home and at work, because it all drives how we communicate and how effective we communicate
Mm.
with other people.
Wow. Do you find that to be a relevant exercise for just owners? Or is that something that you recommend MSPs implement within their own teams as well?
I start with the owners. And that's why when an owner comes to us, we give them the first, the crack dealer marketing. We give them the first one for free.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, but we do one with them, but we can go back and profile the entire team, and I can tell by those reports who are the people that have conflicts on the team. And when we do team training, we call it the drama elimination tool. And it's so fun to do the training because I've talked to the leadership team beforehand. I know who the people who have trouble or the people who get aggravated with one another. And you can see them looking across the room at each other going, "Oh, that's why you drive me crazy. And that's why maybe I need to not get so aggravated with you and I should appreciate your perspective more." Because when what I figured out when I was introduced to this is my COO, the person who had left because he was so fed up with me acting like a lunatic, I was getting aggravated because he's slower, more deliberate in his processing of information. He's a very detail oriented person, and where I'm a bullet point person, I'm like, I don't want to know all the minutia, just get to the point.
Yeah.
And I saw that as, well, he's being slow and he's being lazy and you're just driving me nuts. What I learned afterwards was it wasn't this, it was a yin yang. He had my back. I mean, he was looking at the details so that I wasn't missing things that I should have been, that I should have known. I was moving fast, but he was making sure that we didn't leave. He was picking up the pieces behind my trail. And when that light bulb went off, and it was 2 years after he had left, I went back and I begged him to come back, and he did, to his credit.
Wow.
He only did it after he went out with the other people on my leadership team and my wife to find out, is what he's telling me, has it really changed that much? And
or is he in
me up.
Yeah, is he in the honeymoon phase of a self-realization that's going to get swallowed up by his his existing habits? But then did he stick around, and what happened then?
Till the day we sold the company.
Wow.
It was that relationship and us both learning the synergies is what allowed the company took off after that. We grew 400% in 18 months at one point. I mean, it was like rocket fuel on the company. I mean, I can't stress enough how important communication skills are amongst a team, and for owners to understand what they need to be communicating for everybody else to get behind their vision. So many owners have this, and another quote from my wife, who I think understands business better than I do some days.
Mm-hmm.
She said, she came in another day where she closed the door. She said, "I know you have an amazing vision for this company, and the problem is nobody out there knows what it is." Because I'm that move fast, break stuff, bullet point person. I wasn't like, oh, I need to communicate this to everybody.
Yeah.
And when my COO who came back and she were pointing out to me, you need to be sharing this with people. That's when we started doing, quarterly meetings where I shared the vision and how much progress have we made. And that's, these are all the things that caused the company just to grow so fast and so profitably, that we got the exit that we did. And like I say, if I hadn't known that, Brian, I'd be sitting here with a $500,000 a year MSP watching your podcast, wondering what I was doing wrong.
Right.
And blaming it on something other than myself.
Exactly right. Exactly. Man, well, hang on. We need to punctuate this then, because you had turnover, it sounds like, not just in the ops guy, but you had a lot of turnover, it sounds like you were saying, when you were small. And then you have this, probably wasn't a single, what was it, an aha moment? Was there if I can use the term, was there a rock bottom or a pivot when you realized, like, I think I might be the problem here?
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, we, at one point I had 3/4 of my tech staff walk out, and then they stole the customer list and tried to start a competing company. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to take tech calls, I'm working the help desk, and another comment of my wife's was, this is like watching an episode of Undercover Boss, where you realize the person who runs the company really doesn't know what goes on day to day. So, and that was the time I was introduced. That whole cycle was when I did the personality profiling. I realized, oh crap, this is why this keeps going bad. And it was, I spent a year getting up every day, wanting to throw up, rebuilding the company. And I almost lost the whole thing. And you know what? It was
Wow.
so yeah. I mean, it was like going to AA. I mean, I hit my rock bottom
Yeah.
when I'm sitting there by myself. I've lost my right hand man. I've lost a good chunk of my team. I'm here trying to figure out how I'm going to save this and continue to pay my mortgage. And
Yeah.
that's where the light bulb went off. And I thought, okay, maybe the common denominator in all these failed relationships is me.
Man, I didn't know a lot of this is like inspiring as heck to hear this story. And I'm glad I'm asking these questions because, first of all, I had once heard an addict say, oh, the easiest way to turn your life around is to destroy it. First of all, you don't have to be a wrecking ball. Now, Shawn is he's being very gracious and you're being very vulnerable. I'm speaking to the listener now. Shawn's being very vulnerable about his limitations and his problems. And it's much easier for you to be lighthearted about your own limitations, especially when they're in the rearview mirror and you've done so much work to resolve them. But you might be listening to this going, oh God, you might feel like a wrecking ball. You might be in the path of an avalanche of self-realization right now, going, oh no, I'm about to have to just let this thing bury me and then dig myself out and realize I am the problem here. But I think, first of all, if you're feeling the cold sweats right now listening to this and going, oh my God, it's not Gen Z's fault. It's not the
No.
government's fault. Oh no, it's me. Welcome to the beginning of the best chapter of your life.
Yeah. And I will tell you, if you're sitting there going, God, if my team would just do this or my team would just do that, all my problems would go away. Start looking in the mirror before you start looking at your team, because chances are, if that's your mindset, there's a good chance you could be the problem.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you, there's a happy ending to this. After I did a lot of self-reflection and self-work, Tom, who was my COO, came back and we built this company and we put together what I still think is the best freaking team that's ever been put together at an MSP. And 2 years after I sold the company, I have no stake in this company. I haven't been in the door in 2 years. My wife and I built the house that I'm sitting in talking to you now. And Tom, him and I were talking, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll come over and help you guys move in." And it's February in New Hampshire, so there's snow and mud, and we are going to be moving furniture. And I look outside, and my whole former team has showed up to help move furniture in February in New Hampshire. And I looked at my wife and I said, shit, we did something right if all these people just showed up and they don't work for us anymore just to help us out.
Wow.
And everybody on my team now at Encore is a former team member from there, because when I started up this company, they all said, oh, you're doing something new, we want to be involved.
Yeah.
So, that's both ends of the spectrum right there for you.
Well, that's the redemptive power, I think, of this self-awareness, self-improvement loop. That it's a common theme in this podcast because it's a common theme among winners. Every winner has to choose to not be a loser anymore. And you did something
the
great.
old saying, whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, right?
Yeah, right.
But boy, sometimes it sure felt like I was going to die before the redemption came along.
And you had the humility, though. I think it needs to be acknowledged to go, oh, I was really wrong. And you probably were a pretty strong cheese for a few years with Tom. You probably were very adamant that he was the problem, and probably didn't. It sounds like you didn't really have any ability to take a lot of responsibility for some of the limitations. And then all of a sudden you have to come back and go, hey, I was wrong that whole time about this, and I would like to try again. Yeah, I mean, what did that feel like? Did it feel hard to do, or was it?
It was in the beginning, and it was probably harder to learn to maintain it and to make it a default, in the sense that, I'm still who I am. And if you look at it, if you know anything about disc profiles, I'm a 100D. I was a 100D then. I'm still a 100D. I had to learn how to minimize the negative aspects of the 100D and double down on the positive aspects of the 100D. All right. So I still am who I am and I can still go off. And the funny thing is, Diana, who is my operations manager now, she was my service coordinator at my MSP. She was one of my leadership team members. At one point, I lost my mind and started screaming and yelling. And she looked at me in front of everybody and said, "Will you please knock it off? Your D is showing." And and everybody burst out laughing, including me. But here was the thing. When I threw a temper tantrum like that, the team understood it was my high D and I'm
Yeah.
under stress. And that's what high Ds do when they're under stress. And it wasn't personal. I wasn't mad at them.
Yeah.
And they knew enough to just call me out on my own BS and broke the tension.
Man, it's so awesome.
But that's the difference between a team that knows how to communicate as opposed to a team who just says, "Well, you're the boss, so I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm going to go hide over here until he comes down."
Yeah.
My team doesn't do that. When I start acting up and I forget, and I just let shit get to me, I mean, they just call me right out on it and say, "Knock the crap off and let's get back to solving the problem."
Yeah.
And it's okay,
Yeah. Man, I'm just trying to think of, I want to throw in this one idea. One of my favorite things I ever did with an LLM was the personality profile I find helpful is Enneagram. It's a one that I like to use when relating, building friends and stuff. I haven't really found it to be, it's not really a business oriented one, but Enneagram I find really interesting. Myers-Briggs, I think if you actually use it all the way and look at the like 4-quadrant thing of it, it's pretty profound, not the party trick of 16 like horoscopes that people kind of turn it into. Yeah. But I said, here's my Myers-Briggs, which is ENTJ, which is like 3% of the world and 50% of CEOs or whatever. And then I'm an Enneagram 8, which is the challenger or the contrarian. And then I said, this is my attachment style, which if you're not familiar with attachment theory, there's 4 different attachment styles that had to do with your formative years of how you relate to people emotionally. And then I said, and I have ADHD. And I explained my ADHD. I have inattentive ADHD, which used to be called ADD, but that's not been a medical term for over a decade. I don't know if you know that, but they don't call it ADD anymore.
I am also ADHD and fall into the same. And I mean, I dropped out of school at 9th grade. I figured out later how to go back to college and learn on my own terms.
Cool.
But yeah, I learn very differently. And surprisingly enough, for one of the keynotes I was doing, I did some research and it kind of blinding flash of the obvious, but 40% of entrepreneurs are ADHD.
Yeah.
And if you're an entrepreneur, you're 400% more likely to be dyslexic, which again leads to some of these communication problems and inability to read people. So all the more reason why we need to be learning about these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. To punctuate that thought, I told this LLM, hey, here's all my this, and this, and I'm an entrepreneur. And then I was like, what are the 10 things, or what am I most likely to make mistakes on? And it just like, it basically read me. It was as if my therapist told me everything, like read the most unflattering pages from my mental diary. Like, you're probably bad at this. You're probably bad at this. You're probably bad at this. You're probably good at this. You're probably good at this. Anyway, I just think this journey is a never-ending one, and I know I've kept you longer than I am supposed to, and I want to make sure that we get to kind of. I want to give you a moment here to make sure that the listener knows anything that you want them to know. We talked this great conversation about peer groups and self-improvement and some of your story, which is freaking motivational as hell. You should do way more keynotes, and I'll come to all of them. But to the listener who might be here. To the MSP leader or the sales leader who's going, well, I'm not empowered to join a peer group, or I'm in a peer group, and regardless of that kind of action, is there a personal step that you would encourage the listener to maybe pursue to help them along this kind of journey?
Yeah, and I'm even willing to help them with it. So if you send an email to info@encorestrategic.io and just put free trimetrics into the subject line, I will send you a link for a free Trimetrics report, which is the report I was mentioning with the 3 sciences, and we'll give you a free debrief. We allow one for each company.
Wow. I mean,
Happy to do it.
awesome.
And I think people will find the insights very helpful.
Shawn, you've been great. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for doing everything you're doing. If anybody wants to get a hold of you in any other way to learn more about Encore, would you recommend that same email, or is there a better option?
They can send it directly to me, Shawn, SHAWN, at EncoreStrategic.io, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
See you in Aruba.
Absolutely.